James Ernest of the Grueling Truth Radio Network, part of our Olympic coverage, here with Joe Hamilton. Joe plays Goalball. Joe, can you explain what Goalball is to us?
So the first part of understanding what Goalball is to know that it is a rehabilitation tool that was originally designed for soldiers who lost their eyesight after World War II to build their skills as newly blind individuals. So you're talking about important things like orientation and mobility, spatial awareness, and location improvements. Then you have like all of your team sports benefits that you would get from Little League or Pop Warner football, which would be team building, problem solving, communication. If you play goalball, very similar to if you play football, football you cannot play without a helmet, and goalball you cannot play without a blindfold. There is an eye shade that has been designed so that while the game is happening, there is no visual advantage whatsoever. Everything is done through your audio communication, and the court itself is a tactile map in some ways, so you are able to keep yourself oriented and also, compete against your opponent. The dimensions are the size of a volleyball court, which is essentially 30 feet wide by 60 feet long. But like so many other things, they measure it in meters just to confuse us Americans. And so it's 9 meters wide by 18 meters long. Each end of the court is capped with a hockey-style goal. So by that I mean the goal that's about the same height as a hockey goal, but it is the width of the volleyball court. And they take string and they lay it down in a rectangular border and then put tape on top of it. And then within the field of play, there are different hash marks for the three positions. There's a left wing and a right wing position, and they line up about 5 feet in front of the goal line and on the sidelines. And the center player is 10 feet in front of the goal line and in the middle of the goal. And there are lines taped to the floor so that all three players have an orientation line to start play when they're defending. And of course, the goal itself has a crossbar that's about 1.5 meters tall, so maybe 5.5 feet, or just under 5 feet actually is 1.5 meters. And you can put your shoulder blades or whatever against that particular point of orientation to make sure as you start your offensive play, you are oriented correctly. The ball has bells inside. There are 4 sleigh bells inside, so that also lends itself to the auditory aspect of the game. So the ball's making noise as it's being passed between players, unless, of course, they're proficient enough to hand it off without the bells making too much sound. So as you can imagine, one of the advantages in the game of goalball, ironically, is that your opponent can't see exactly what it is you're doing. So you try to take advantage, and then you are rolling or bouncing the ball. So it's a volley sport where we're going back and forth, and my team would bounce or roll the ball as hard as I possibly could, and as legal as possible. We can talk a little bit more about the penalties in the game. And you and your 2 teammates, it's 3-on-3, are defending the whole 9-meter goal line and trying to prevent the ball from getting past you or over you and into the goal. And you play for 2 12-minute halves. At 3-minute halftime, the teams switch ends of the court. And there is a 10-second possession clock. So once I roll or bounce the ball and it hits you or one of your 2 teammates, the 10-second clock starts, and you have that time to return serve. A couple of kind of interesting things is that they don't actually display the 10-second clock. So the players on the court wouldn't be able to see it anyway because of the blindfolds, and the coaches aren't able to I do a pretty good job after 24 years of describing what it is and how it's played.
Yeah, definitely. After watching the YouTube clips the other night, I feel that was spot on accurate. I mean, shoot, that definitely it explains a lot, because one of the things I didn't understand at first was the rolling of the ball, and like you said, you want to throw it fast or roll it fast. Most of the people originally just think you're trying to do it to get by your opponent, and get the goal. But after watching the game, it made me think, it's like, well, maybe they also roll it fast because, like you said, the 10-second clock. So if they accidentally do hit one of their opponents and it doesn't go in, they're going to get the ball back, because if it bounces off the opponent, they're not going to be able to get the shot off in 10 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple of things. It's infractions in the game. So the court is broken up into 3-meter sections. So each team facing each other is, again, at opposite ends of the volleyball court. They never come any closer than 40 feet away from each other. They stay in their own defensive zone. And the defensive zone itself is actually anywhere between the goal line, so that's the very back of the court, to what's called the high ball line, which is, again, going back to some penalties. You have to make sure you bounce or roll the ball. If it is in the air as it leaves your zone, then that's a penalty, and the guy who committed that penalty has to defend the whole 9-meter goal for one shot from the other team. So you really want to make sure that the ball is touching the floor. You have 6 meters from your goal line to your offensive zone line. Again, it's called the high ball line, just so that I can, speak to you guys a little bit more rapidly about the game. So your defense is basically set up within the first 3 meters from the goal line to the team line. Now, you can defend all the way out to your high ball line if you want, but moving 3 meters closer to your opponent doesn't really gain you much of an advantage, because you're dealing with balls that are traveling anywhere between 35 and 40 miles an hour. So you want to try to give your team as much of an opportunity to react to the ball as possible. So we, as the U.S., are teaching players to actually play all 3 on a skirmish line about 1.5 meters, or about, like I said, about 58 inches, or so about 5 feet from your own goal line, and then lining up in that 3-man stripe across the goal line, communicating with each other based on where the ball is being thrown from, and then trying to keep it from going in the goal. So each team has a defensive zone, an offensive zone, and then a neutral zone. And if the ball rolls into the neutral zone and goes out of bounds, then it goes back to the throwing team. So you have an opportunity, as you were saying, to get some ricochets off of your opponent and potentially, create a second chance opportunity for yourself.
The part I don't understand is the center is considered the defensive player, the way I understand it, where the wings are more considered offensive. But with the goal being so wide, wouldn't basically everyone be equally responsible for defense?
Yeah, I think that it's something that as the game has progressed, and so when I first started, really getting involved with the United States Association of Blind Athletes and playing the game, it was, hey, your center guy is going to be responsible for, attacking on defense. He has the most responsibility to cover the center 3 meters of the court. Most times when guys are blindfolded and they're rolling or bouncing, we say throwing the ball. I just want to, make sure we get the vernacular right, even though it's along the floor or it's bouncing, we're still throwing it as hard as we can. Mm-hmm. And as the game has progressed, as it's gotten faster, as, we've discovered more proficient, athletes, guys who are bringing an athletic slant to the game and not just using it potentially as a rehab tool. You start to see that floor balance out a little bit, where all 3 guys do have 3 meters of goal line to defend, and where the center ends up being the most important defensive player is that when you're playing the wing position, if the ball is all the way across the court from you, then there's geometrically a portion of the court that you don't have to be too concerned about, whereas the center doesn't really have any geometric benefit based on where the ball that is mainly why you're seeing him identified as the primary defensive player, just because he doesn't have the luxury of a sideline to work with. But especially in the U.S. game that we have, developed over the past half dozen years or so, there's constant movement amongst the players on the court. So when you're defending the ball in a spot, then you are intentionally getting up and moving to a different spot on the floor to throw the ball back at your opponent. So it's a constant sort of rotation of guys where you might start in center, and then the game begins and you don't make it back to center for 6 or 7 or 8 possessions because somebody has moved you out of their way to throw the ball. You've gone to play wing, and then, just the game sort of flows in that.
Okay, so there's like a constant rotation, so it's not that you're really have to, it's more like basketball where you're not stuck in a spot as opposed to, say, football where pretty much you have to line up in your spot or else.
Right, exactly, and the key is that those lines that are put on the floor are orientation marks, right? So they definitely have an assigned value, left wing, right wing, center, but all they really are is just so that you make sure you're lining up straight and you can use your body to defend as much goal line as possible. Beyond that, there's not really set position. But again, this is the American game, James. I'm saying that we have begun to really revolutionize the way this game is played, because before 2012 was very much what you were talking about. Guys who were specific to a position, and if the ball came to them, then they would throw it back. If the ball was blocked by the center, he would throw it to the wing player, and just sort of going that way. And again, just for rehab purposes, I'm building my skills, I'm building my confidence, I'm becoming a successful competitor, but also a more proficient person who is blind. And then, as we, as the U.S. guys, have, started to implement the physical fitness component, it's become more, line up on your orientation line and then, finish the play at wherever the ball is thrown to, so that you're involved with your teammates and trying to make sure that if that thing ricochets, you got somebody, patrolling the goal line as a secondary option to prevent goals. And then, if you block the ball forward, it used to be the center was always responsible for getting up and chasing the ball down. And I said, nobody knows better where the ball is going to ricochet potentially than the player who blocked it. So now, again, going back to using some of that basketball terminology, you block the ball and you're responsible for your own rebound. You go out and collect it, and then that then now puts the center position in more of an offensive place, because that person's usually the closest to the guy retrieving the ball, unless, of course, it's the center that's retrieving it. But if I'm a wing, I block it forward to chase it down. The guy who's actually closest to me is in the center position, so passing him the ball so that he can take the throw is the right play, because of the 10-second shot clock as it's counting down. So definitely a change in that philosophy that you spoke of, where there's a right wing, left wing, in the center. Instead of guys being assigned to those positions, you just recognize those are the orientation points on the floor, and then everything else is done through communication and, of course, your ability to block the ball.
I've read where Goalball has actually started to go, or gotten so popular in a team building exercise that some of the professional teams in other sports have utilized it to try to build communication amongst themselves. Seattle Sounders in the FC, or in the MLS, Nashville Predators, and then the Boston Bruins have all utilized that. What's your thoughts on that? On them using that to build their ability to communicate?
Well, so I can tell you from my personal experience that the University of California, Berkeley, about 3 or 4 years ago, began to offer students a goalball course for credit. And essentially it was just because they're such a forward-thinking university on embracing the college experience that they thought maybe having a connective cartilage between disabled students and able-bodied students. And goalball, of course, is the easiest way, because it's just manufactured to be game that you're playing with a disability, a visual disability. I had the opportunity to work with at Cal players from the water polo team that's been extremely successful, the women's volleyball program, some of their track athletes even. I got a chance to teach goalball to Javed Best, who's the former Detroit Lion, and you and I talked about me being a Detroit sports fan before the interview, and that was a real thrill. And every single one of those athletes came to me and to the individual who was sort of the program coordinator and said, I think this will help my discipline in water polo and volleyball, especially because they're team sports, and I'm now starting to understand how better to use verbal communication, how better to, get a feel for my teammates if they're close to me. That there's always sort of that energy aura. I know that, you hear a lot of, jokes and things about it, but the thing is, if you put on a blindfold and you move around, once you sort of adjust to that fact of not being able to see, then you start to sort of get a feel for, if it's a counter next to me or a human being next to me. So those kinds of things perceptually can really help. So I'm not surprised. I was down in Nashville in December helping with a camp for junior high kids, and we got to go to a Nashville Predators game, and of course then they've been extremely successful. So I'll definitely say that, goalball was a big reason why.
Awesome. Switching from the sport itself to more specifically you, I was reading up, you're in the B1 program?
Correct. So I am the way they classify athletes with visual impairments. It's into 4 categories, and it's, I guess they do B1, 2, 3, and 4. So, it was a real, I think they did that because they're classifying blind athletes. But so a B1 athlete is someone who has 0 usable eyesight. I have not had any usable eyesight since about the age of 10. And you could have some, perception eyesight. So you can see lights, maybe shapes, maybe colors. But if you don't have any functional vision that would, allow you to avoid an obstacle or, identify a fire escape or something, then they would classify you as a B1 athlete. So I have a little bit of an advantage, I say to people, because I live goalball every day when I'm crossing the street or buying milk at the Safeway grocery store. I am doing it totally blind, and when I'm out on the goalball court, of course, I'm doing it totally blind. So I do think that that is a bit of an advantage. A B2 athlete would be someone who has progressively more vision than someone who would be classified as a B1. So again, functional vision, be able to recognize an exit sign, all the way up to being able to see the beginnings of a shape at about 6.5 feet. So if you can, see a flight attendant coming, once the flight attendant gets about 6 feet away from you, then you are probably a B2. A B3 is someone who is being able to start to see that person coming towards them at, anywhere between 7.5 feet to 20 feet. So again, it's kind of an imperfect system. I always say that only the individual really knows the impact of their visual impairment. I mean, you can go to a VA hospital and put on different pairs of glasses that simulate, what each eye condition is supposed to do for you with regards to, tunnel vision and cataracts and all the different causes of blindness or reasons for being blind. But each individual is their own creature in their own habitat. They do as much as you could possibly imagine to get the most out of what eyesight they have. So that's why another reason why the blindfold is such an important aspect of the game, because it just levels the playing field, whether you're able to see not at all or you just drove in your brand new Chevrolet. We're all equal once we get out into the goalball court.
Notice that you're 6'4". Is your height an advantage in the sport?
I think so. I mean, the nice thing is that you're defending the goal line, and so you're laying out on your hip. You saw the video you said, and so the players are laying out in full extension with their forearms kind of up in front of their face, defending, against any contact the ball might make with head and such, and then you're, fully extended. So being 6'4", having, a 32-inch reach or whatever is very helpful, especially because so much of what's happening on the court is determined before the ball is thrown. If you do a good job of following where the ball is on the other end of the court, obviously you can shift and position yourself, angle your body so that you're able to cover as much ground as possible. So anyone who's 5'7" is going to have to be able to cover, a good half a foot to a foot more by, moving out of space, whereas I can put my body into a space and fill it up quite nicely. And, of course, I still need to be able to make athletic plays as well. But as far as the actual coverage from just, laying out, I cover a lot more ground than, the average height person. And it definitely is, it's helpful. Now, obviously, you have to make sure you block the ball when it hits you. And sometimes I seem to have trouble with that. But overall, it does seem like the ball will hit me more, than some other folks because of the area that I'm able to cover when I'm totally laid out on my side and leaning towards the ball.
So say, for example, if we got, I want to say his name's Andre Drummond, is that the center, or is that the guy?
Yeah, exactly. That's right. If we get Big Drummond out there and play some center, 6'11", he's got some definite goalball
potential. Yeah,
some natural goalball potential. Absolutely.
Yeah, because like you said, it's 9 meters, the whole length. So yeah, he would take up, I would say, a pretty good percentage.
Yeah, he would easily cover his 3-meter area just by getting down on his hip and laying out on his side. It's 9 meters wide from sideline to sideline, so definitely he would take up his third pretty easily.
Excellent. And then I see you've had some success in the sport, winning couple silver medals and bronze so far.
So the U.S. Men's Goalball program started in 1976, and the Paralympic movement started including goalball. And I was introduced to the sport in 1988. I was only 10 years old at the time, and so I actually had no idea about Paralympics or any of those opportunities. I grew up in a family with 2 older brothers who, were moderately, in my opinion, successful in high school basketball. And so watching them develop and playing basketball with them in the backyard as a kid, my goal was to just try and to replicate that team sports atmosphere and see if I could at some point be more successful than they were. I went to Paralympics in Sydney in 2000. We finished 11th out of 12 teams. I was a 22-year-old kid at that time, and I thought, this Paralympic thing is just going to be a part of, what I do every 4 years. As it turns out, it's a little bit more difficult to achieve that standing. And so in 2004, when the Paralympics were in Athens, Greece, I was not a part of the team. They did finish as the bronze medalist. And then in 2016, after a 16-year love affair with the game of goalball, and even longer than that, I was finally selected again to be a part of Team USA to go to the Rio Paralympic Games. And there we finished as the silver medalist, came into the tournament as the number 7th ranked team in the world. So it was such a great accomplishment for us. It was obviously very emotional for me. My mom was in Rio. She had also attended the games in Sydney, and, we barely won. We won 1 game at the very end. So it was to keep us from being the absolute dead last team, and this time we started out with a win, and then just kept the ball rolling, ended up playing against Brazil, the hometown Brazilians in their gym, in their country for a semifinal showdown, and we came away victorious in that game, and that, is a very big highlight for me for a few reasons I can share with you, but I don't want to jump too far off topic. So definitely, had bounced back, become a leader of this team on an international level, trying to help these guys, find the fit. Where does goalball fit into what you're doing in your life at home? We have a grad student who's now in his, getting his doctorate from the University of Delaware. We have a high school math teacher with a wife and a son. We have a strength and conditioning and personal trainer for 24-hour fitness with a wife and 4 kids. So to be the goalball addict in that group, and doing everything I can to help them find that game-life balance. It was a great challenge for me, and obviously they had challenges that I can't even imagine. To be able to come through all of that and to have the success that we did in the Paralympics. The two guys who I played with the majority of the time at the Paralympics are also Michigan-born athletes. All three of us attended Western Michigan University in Kalamazoo. We're all Broncos, so we had quite a connective tissue there, 5 years younger than me. So, I've watched them grow up in the game and seen their athletic ability and their enthusiasm, just grow and then finally blossom into me being able to ride them for a silver medal in the Paralympics.
Nice. That sounds, yeah, shoot. So it sounds like you were saying, you started off young, you were kind of cocky to begin with, and you've developed into a leader of the sport. So that's awesome.
It's given me a lot of benefits. People are always asking me about my personal attitude and my approach to life. How can you be so easy about blindness? How does it not seem like it slows you down on a daily basis? And I said, you have to understand that most of the cool shit that's happened to me in my life is because I'm blind. And so that definitely helps to, ease that pain a little bit. I've traveled to South America and Australia and Europe and all over North America. My parents have been a huge supporter of me. As I mentioned, they were both in Sydney in 2000, and my mom came to Rio in 2016. My dad was, unilaterally responsible for most of the goalball that I played in my high school and college years, because he was always wanting to posse up with another driver and take us from, Kalamazoo to Colorado Springs, or Kalamazoo to Columbia, South Carolina, or Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, 12, 13-hour drives, Montreal, Quebec, Canada. So, you obviously learn how to be a team by losing some, and you learn how to be a team by, some grueling traveling conditions. 5 guys in a Ford Explorer can be interesting for a 10-hour trip, but, it doesn't kill you, it makes you stronger, and, this has been my NFL, my NBA. It's where I can excel and be a lover of sport and a passionate leader, and so it's really given a lot back to me as I've put so much into it and have learned to like I said, not only be a good athlete and a potential champion, but also a better, more quality human being, both as a man and also as a man who's blind. So definitely can say that it's been a very good love-hate relationship with me in the game.
You mentioned in the finals playing against Brazil at home. Are there any rules or regulations against the fans? Any limitations on their noise level?
So one of the challenges, we played them in a semifinal, so it was a Final Four matchup that we drew against Brazil. The Paralympic Games were heavily attended by the citizens of Rio and the country folk, the countrymen of Brazil. So we were playing goalball in front of crowds larger than 8,500, 9,500. And, most of them didn't even have the benefit of watching goalball on YouTube like you had before coming into the interview. So they really didn't have any idea what was going on. So there's no specific governance. Like, the team isn't assessed a penalty for crowd noise or anything like that. But, when a ball is ricocheted off of a player and is still, what we call loose and headed towards the goal line, the, crowd, of course, would crescendo. And so that makes it very difficult, because in the U.S. you're playing goalball for, in front of 26 or 30 people. It's not very loud in the arena or gym or whatever. And so definitely the fans add an element to the game at that level that is very hard to prepare for. But they are asked to be quiet during play, similar to tennis or golf or bowling, I guess. And then they're able to, of course, react to, a goal. They can go absolutely bananas. And, they obviously are, they are encouraged not to make the noise or to react to the play until the referee has blown the whistle and established, if it was blocked out, if it was a goal, whatever the case may be. So, most definitely a thing for players who are aspiring to be high level, elite level caliber goalball players, is knowing how much different the game is at that level because of the attendance of the fans, not necessarily because it's any different with rules of, still a 9 by 18 meter court with everything that you practice, but inject about 9,000 times the number of people who come to watch you play, and it's a thrill as well as somewhat of a challenge.
You had played in the MAC. Did you end up representing your university, or at that point was it a club team?
So, not yet. Definitely it was a club sport at Western Michigan. The two guys that I mentioned to you earlier, John Kusku and Tyler Marin, they played for Western's club team. I had formed up a high school team with a couple guys who were from my side of the state. I grew up about 17 miles west of Detroit, Michigan. And so in a town called Wayne in Michigan. And so we had Dearborn, which is a city close by, and then Romulus, which is the city actually where the Detroit Metro Airport is located. So the three of us started playing together, as sophomores in high school. And so we kind of kept it going through my college years. So we had two, highly competitive teams in the state of Michigan. One was the Western Michigan Club team. The other was the Michigan Spitfire, and that was the East Side guys that my dad, helped start around the tournaments and stuff. So I practiced a lot. I actually went to Western because they had a goalball program there. They have a blind rehab teaching and orientation mobility master's program. So a lot of folks coming in from across the country to be involved in getting a degree in some form of, blindness education. And then they also hosted for my whole, school life, they hosted a sports education camp for blind kids between the ages of 10 and 16. So I got to go there and learn about how they've adapted sports so that you could participate in your gym class at school and not, sit on the sidelines. And then goalball, of course, was something that my we call them, itinerant teachers. My VI teacher, my orientation and mobility instructor, brought back to our school district in Livonia, Michigan, and started providing a weekly practice for the students there. We had about, all told, elementary, junior high, and high school, about 12 blind and low vision students from all over the western Wayne County area that would come to Livonia schools. And so that was a really nice thing because, again, it helped me build my social outlets a little bit. Helped me try to get some of my able-bodied or, sighted friends involved in the game. None of them stuck, which I'm not expected of showing the world, maybe. But, so for me, it was a lot of opportunity, very supportive family, very involved teachers, great passion for sports, and then, finding this team sports niche. And then getting a chance to go to Western, play goalball a couple times a week against several other very high-caliber players who were from the state who, matriculated to Kalamazoo. Definitely a huge contributor to my individual success, both domestically and internationally.
I was going to say, like we talked about off the air, maybe we'll end up running into each other at, say, a Red Hawks game.
You never know where we might be trying to promote our sport. We're pushing hard for collegiate goalball. In 2015, we were partnered with an organization in Fort Wayne, Indiana, called Turnstone Center for Children and Adults with Disabilities, and they allowed goalball to have a center of excellence. And they, in conjunction with the United States Association for Blind Athletes, has allowed us to get on the goalball court 5 days a week for about 11 months leading into the Rio Paralympic Games. So a huge contributor to our success down in Rio is the great folks at Turnstone. E.J. Whitney is our strength and conditioning coach, and he, partnered with us through the work of Turnstone. So really, really, really great facility and a great organization that has been, a bellwether in Fort Wayne, Indiana for almost 75 years. Anytime there's presented a need or an opportunity for someone with a disability, be it developmental, intellectual, or physical, Turnstone's answering the bell. They're creating programs. They're eliminating costs. They're, creating possibilities. And so we're just the first, partnership that they it's paid dividends for us as athletes to achieve what we've achieved. But then also for them, because now they have another notch in their belt to say, hey, we make it happen for you. If you have a disability, find us, and we will put you in the best position to succeed and live the fullest and most complete life you possibly can.
Now, most athletes, when they're getting ready for a game, they either listen to some type of music, rock, rap, something like that. I hear you're into comedy. Who do you like to listen to?
I'll just throw on the Pandora comedy. There's so much downtime. When you talk about a goalball tournament, such as the Paralympic Games, because it's a 7-day event. You're usually playing one game a day, sometimes two, depending on the level of teams, number of teams, things like that. But so I try and be really loose. Mental preparation is so important because you're trying to do the same thing over and over and over again for 100 times in a goalball game, and so it can get very, very, very boring sometimes because maybe you're not getting hit with the ball, or maybe you keep throwing the ball out of bounds. So you have a lot of things that really challenge your focus, and so I really like to be outside of my headphones. When we get into that last 15 or 20 minutes before game time, I'm really trying to connect with anyone who's come out of that music shell, and just gauge where they are, try to tell some jokes so that people don't let the moment get too big for them. Because it is just goalball, and we are terrific at it as a country, and as guys who played at the Rio Paralympics. We were really ready for those games, and just making sure that everybody remembered that was sort of one of the things I really tried to do. But I love Anthony Jeselnik. I think he's hysterical. He obviously is more of your rated R comic. I was watching Cristela Alonso had a special on Netflix. Checking out with my girlfriend. She's a judo athlete, and so she's sort of really into the music. Like the workouts at our house, it's a concentration in decibel levels because she's putting the music up. She's doing the wall push-ups and getting on the treadmill and isolating herself. So I think that it's really about approach. I think if I was an individual sport athlete, I might be more inclined to try to find those ways to get my adrenaline, hammering before I stepped out into competition. With goalball, I think you can't allow yourself those sort of emotional roller coaster rides. If you get too excited or you get too down on yourself, next thing you know, that one mistake that you made is parlayed itself into 3 mistakes. And so, I definitely want to try to keep everybody mentally focused, but also, take any intensity, any, energy that you've built up leading in this game and put a lid on it. Keep it inside, put a lid on it, and so that way, you can play with a controlled effort. And then if you need to, at some point in the game, you can take the lid off of that and just let things fly. And that's really kind of what happened to us in that championship game in Brazil. We playing against Lithuania. We got behind 2-0 early, 5-0 by the middle of the first half, and it was just time to take the lid off of that energy bottle and let it rip. And all 6 guys on our team got into the game. All 6 guys on our team scored a goal in the game, and we unfortunately lost the game 14-8. But I thought that for what we were trying to achieve, Lithuania has been a really good team for a really long time. And it just happened to be their time to win that Paralympic gold medal.
Sounds great. So, are you looking forward to giving another shot in, 2020?
And I always tell people that the game is part of my DNA. I will play and mentor and compete for as long as my body will hold up. I learned in this 4-year cycle what it means to be a Paralympic caliber athlete. It takes quite a bit of physical preparation. So I'm going to keep playing. I'm going to keep training. Someone else sort of controls my destiny. They'll decide whether or not I'm still relevant enough in the game to be one of the selections of the Paralympic team in 2020. I hope to be there, and I look forward to being there. But if I'm not there individually, then my goal is to have as many fingerprints on those guys who are going to be heading over there in 4 years and making sure that they're as ready as possible to continue, a legacy that I was a part of, the first team to make a gold medal game for the U.S. in over 25 years, and just really hoping to, to be a part of it, even if it's not me, leading the team actually on the court.
So, final thoughts, places where fans can learn more about goalball. Obviously, YouTube, like you said, is an important tool, but any other spots that are very beneficial?
Well, I think that, for college-age athletes or college-age individuals looking for something that could potentially pay dividends for them down the road with regards to traveling to places they've never traveled to, engaging in a community they may have never have thought to engage in. Check out your local Goalball program. I think that people would be really surprised how many programs there are around, how many people who are blind needing that support from a sighted person to help set up the court, help officiate the games. The guy who's now the coach of men's USA Goalball, he was sent out as a 20-year-old nephew of a woman who happened to work for the city of Sacramento, and so she sent her nephew out to help us set up our Saturday goalball practice. And he just happened to be a really, cool, laid-back, sports kind of fan. So we talk a lot of college basketball, and we talk a lot of NBA basketball. And next thing you know, I'm telling them, hey, kids, stick with me, and I'll show you the world. That was back in the fall of 2009. 2012, after we had achieved some domestic success by winning a national goalball national championship, he was invited out to our men's training camp and was asked to be the assistant coach. So if you officiate, if you coach, if you are just looking for something to dive into because you like sports and maybe you'd like to find something a little bit more unique or a little less known, our game is here waiting for you to come play, to come ref, to come coach, whatever it is that you can contribute. We'd love to have you, and then it just makes our sport, better if we can get more notoriety and more people involved.